Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. Earlier this week we got the mini balance patch for the Titans meta, which nerfed Lab Constructor and Solid Alibi. So it didn't have that much of an effect on the meta, but obviously Titans is still a fairly new expansion, things are still being found, more decks are discovered, decks are being refined. So in this video it's time to look again at the top 15 best decks in the Titans meta. And coming in at number 15 is Enrage Warrior. People are often asking me about warrior decks. Hey, are there good warrior decks? There's Mech Rogue Warrior, which is kind of disappointing. There's Control Warrior, which is even more disappointing. And then there is Enrage Warrior. And if you choose to play Enrage Warrior, you can actually put some new cards in the deck, because you can put in a pair of Steam Guardians, and they do well in the deck. But overall, very few people play Enrage Warrior. The sample size for Enrage Warrior decks is in low hundreds of games, so it's not very reliable, the data that you get, but that data does imply that Enrage Warrior could be a deck that you can climb with. It has some strong matchups and it's pretty much a time-tested deck already as it is. So Enrage Warrior, if you want to play Warrior, if you insist on playing Warrior right now, then this is still your best option. At number 14 we have Control Priest. Control Priest can be a frustrating experience to face. It has some good matchups, and when you try to beat Control Priest with a deck that Control Priest is good against, then they just remove everything you have, and they remove everything you have, and they remove everything you have, and then you die out of sheer frustration. However, Control Priest's big problem in the current meta is that it has an abysmal matchup against Hound Hunter. And Hound Hunter is currently the most popular deck. If you look at statistics on like Diamond 1, Diamond 2, just the last legs on your way to Legend, Hound Hunter makes up 25% of the meta. And if you have an absolutely miserable matchup against that, then no matter what your good matchups are, you're going to have a pretty bad time. So Control Priest is ready to take over the right meta, but whether it will ever find that right meta remains to be seen. Either way, it's a playable deck and it has some strengths as well. At number 13 we have Undead Priest, and now that we have a little bit more data, it starts to look like Undead Priest is actually the better archetype, especially on the climb to Legend. Once you're in Legend, then there are some instances where Control Priest becomes superior, but on the way to Legend, typically Undead Priest is the deck that performs better, and especially when it includes Aman Tool. Now that we have more data, Aman Tool is clearly the best card in Undead Priest, even though it costs 7. And the second most expensive card in the deck costs 5. It is mind-boggling. Undead Priest, other than that, is exactly the same aggro deck that it used to be in Festival of Legends, no other changes whatsoever, but at Aman Tool and the deck instantly becomes better. Undead Priest is also not great against Hound Hunter, but at least it's not as bad as Control Priest. At number 12 we have Curse Warlock. The Warlock power has shifted in favor of Thaddius Warlock again. Curse Warlock looked good for a while. Curse Warlock is typically stronger against the slow decks and weaker against the fast ones. Strong against stuff like Blood Death Knight, Control Priest, even strong against Thaddius Warlock itself. Curse Warlock just has that inevitability in the end, which is pretty sweet. But it also has weaknesses because it's not as fast. It can't snowball games out of control like Thaddius Warlock can. And then decks like Nature Shaman, Drum Druid, Secret Hunter, they just beat Curse Warlock before Curse Warlock gets their game going. Other than that, the deck hasn't changed by a single card since the first week of Titans, and overall Titans didn't bring that many new things into the deck, although of course there's a little bit of Sargeras there and Tonewell Tentacle here, so there's some stuff going on with this one. At number 11 we have Blood Death Knight, and yes, Blood Death Knight starts to look like it is the strongest Death Knight archetype once again. Plague Death Knight has fallen in favor. Frost Death Knight, Unholy Death Knight just can't seem to get going. People are not really playing that much with them either, so I'm not sure if there's something competitive there, but at least we do not have statistics that there would be. Blood Death Knight, on the other hand, I'm actually quite excited about one new card in this list, and that card is Eulogizer. Because if you forge your Eulogizer, you can get more corpses. And I've often, when I've played Blood Death Knight, I've had some difficulties with corpses. Like, I want to do a corpse explosion, but where do I get the corpses for that? And Eulogizer looks like it could be an answer to that problem. However, Blood Death Knight sample sizes are quite low, and then when I look at different lists, like in this list, Eulogizer is one of the best cards. Then there's another list which samples have only like 200 games that shows Eulogizer as the worst card in the entire deck. So how do you make sense of all that? it's still a little bit tough. But Blood Death Knight, I really want to give Eulogizers a chance, and it seems like it's getting there. It's starting to find its footing, and it's starting to find ways to succeed in the meta, at least in a limited fashion. At number 10 we have Nature Shaman. Nature Shaman is a deck that many professional players are super excited about. It's an OTK deck. Nature Shaman has become stronger and has really embraced becoming an OTK deck. But then again, in the higher ranks where Nature Shaman is more common, people are playing a bit of a different meta than on the Climb to Legend, then people are actively starting to deck against Nature Shaman. We're seeing Speaker Stompers, a card that previously only saw play in Wild, being included in multiple lists right now just so that Nature Shaman cannot get their combo turn. There are also many competing Nature Shaman lists. There are Totemic Evidence lists, then there are these Schooling Feral Spirit lists. Do you use Radiance of Azara? Do you use Thorim? Do you use Inza? There are multiple alternatives. Overall stats show that this would be the best one, especially on the Climb towards Legend. But the Climb towards Legend, there are so many bit aggressive decks that it's kind of punishing to play Nature Shaman. So in a right meta, this deck can be downright oppressive, but especially on the Climb, there are quite a few counters around. And at number 9 we have another professional player favorite, Rainbow Mage, another OTK deck. How would you guess? Yes, Rainbow Mage just going for those OTKs with Sif, and this is the best list for climbing. There are also some Rainbow Mage lists that include Solid Alibi even after the nerf, because Solid Alibi is pretty decent against Nature Shaman, so we're talking about this kind of OTK deck meta that exists in some ranks, but not in the ranks where you climb to Legend, because when you climb to Legend there are lots of these more aggressive decks, and they prey on both the Nature Shaman and the Rainbow Mage. And also Solid Alibi typically is not good enough to protect you from those, so you just want to maximize on your power, maximize on your star power, your Inquisitive Creations, and then boom, try to win games with your combos. As another sign of the more aggressive meta on the climbing ranks, the best Shaman deck when it comes to climbing the Legend is not even Nature Shaman anymore, it's Totem Shaman. Totem Shaman is actually still pretty decent. As long as you don't get beaten out of the board immediately, like a Mech Rogue can still do to you, or as long as opponent doesn't have really good control tools like Control Priest does, then getting your totems going, getting your buffs going, getting your mana cheated big minions with Think From Below and Gigant Totem on the board can still be a very powerful strategy. At number 7 we have Relic Demon Hunter, and this seems to be the best performing Relic Demon Hunter list, and you can see that this list is sort of teched for that Nature Shaman meta. We have Prosecutor Maltranix, we have Blademaster Okani, we have 2 copies of Speaker Stomper. This deck really wants to fight against spell-based decks. Well, that includes Rainbow Mage, Nature Shaman, it might include Drum Druid as well. Generally, Relic Demon Hunter is weak against Drum Druid, but we don't have great stats on the inclusion of Speaker Stomper for that matchup, and it's actually possible that Speaker Stomper might be able to improve that matchup enough to make Relic Hunter a bit more of a contender also in that. So overall, a slightly newer and more disruption-based Relic Demon Hunter so that you can get your cards played and get your late game. And at number 6 we have Thaddius Warlock. Thaddius Warlock has not seen any development since the first week. This is still the exact same list that I featured last week for Thaddius Warlock. But what has made Thaddius Warlock stronger now is that Hound Hunter is so incredibly omnipresent, especially on the climbing ranks, Diamond 1, Diamond 2, there are so many Hound Hunters. And Thaddius Warlock is one of the few decks that has a good matchup against Hound Hunter. So if you want to counter the people who are playing Hound Hunter Climb, unless you want to join them and play Hound Hunter as well, Thaddius Warlock is one of the options that you can play, and then you can just try to counter them. Counter the most popular thing and climb like that. At number 5 we have Pure Paladin. And Pure Paladin is kind of mellow. It doesn't raise significant passion one way or another, but it remains a strong deck, and this is exactly the same list that I featured last week, and I'm actually a little bit sad about that. Because we have cards like Astral Serpent, which doesn't seem to be doing much. We have cards like Seafloor Savior, which also doesn't seem to be doing much. I'm not even completely convinced by the Crime Street Outfitter, although it does a little bit more than those cards. So I would expect that there would be more room for experimentation, more room for refinement for Pure Paladin, but Paladin just It has been around for some time now, people are just not that excited about playing Paladin, so the deck doesn't see a ton of experimentation. Either way, having some dudes, having Crusader Aura still makes for a great deck, and Pure Paladin is a solid choice for climbing that also potentially has some more room for refinement. And at number 4 we have the big Mech Rogue. Yes, Mech Rogue is still here. Lab Constructor was nerfed. What is Mech Rogue's answer to Lab Constructor nerf? Well, one answer potentially is to cut Lab Constructor and go back to the Scourge Illusionist package. So Scourge Illusionist with a death rattle can draw an expensive minion from your deck, and it can make it cheaper. In the early iterations of the deck, that expensive unit was typically the containment unit, so hey, you get a really big mech with a really big death rattle. But now things have changed a little bit, and with some experimentation, actually the strongest target for your Scourge Illusionist is Mothership. So you Scourge Illusionist, Illusionist dies, you play a really cheap Mothership, and it gives you more mechs, so you have more targets for magnetization. And that is a new alternative way to win games when you just can't Lab Constructor that well anymore. And after all, you still have Mimiron, you still have Ini, so you still have plenty of win conditions left. It's just that this Illusionist Mothership package, in particular Illusionist Mothership, not the other packages with Illusionist, has become the strongest Mech Rogue archetype. And at number 3 we have Drum Druid. Drum Druid's main ticket to fame, again, is great matchup against Hound Hunter. So you just build up a board that Hound Hunter cannot respond to before they're able to kill you, and then you just win the game. I actually played a budget version of Drum Druid to Legend myself this week, so you can find a video of that on this channel. But this would be the full version, with Disciples, with Widowblue Sisman, with Astalor and Topior. That Astalor slot is a quite intriguing one, because there are multiple alternatives. Some people have been using Astalor, then there are versions with Kiri, and then in the budget list I actually used Ignis. But generally speaking, all of those alternatives are quite lackluster, and I actually wonder whether it would be better just to add a Wild Growth instead of Astalor into this list. That might be something that I should try at some point, because that legendary slot just overall seems a little bit disappointing. It doesn't really help you with your main game plan, which is to make that big board with the drum circle and win the game. But be that as it may, Drum Druid is the third strongest deck in the game right now. Then we have the top 2, and the top 2 archetypes have not changed since last week. Top 2 archetypes, the number 2 continues to be Secret Arcane Hunter. The Secret Face Hunter version has almost disappeared from the ladder. I can't even find proper stats on that anymore. Everyone is now playing the Arcane list. So the Arcane spells, bit of Jack of all trades, Master of none, they give you some removal, they give you some damage, some this and that, but when you combine them with the secrets, and then you combine them with Agramar and Starstrong Bow for damage, then suddenly you have a pretty well-versed package that's actually well-rounded and can take on many threats. Except for Hound Hunter, which is a little bit too much. And that remains the best deck in the format. Number 1, Hound Hunter. Only real weaknesses are Drum Druid and Thaddius Warlock. It has a great matchup spread otherwise. This is a slightly newer list, and this list of Hound Hunter also includes 2 copies of Speaker Stomper. That is a tech card, and it remains to be seen, is that Speaker Stomper going to remain a good, strong tech card in this expansion? It has never been used in Standard really before. It has seen play in Wild, where disruption is much more important, and maybe the power level of Standard is also reaching a point where you just want cards like Speaker Stomper in your decks. And if you have all the legendary cards in the world, then you can put together this deck and just crush the opponents. Unless they happen to be playing Drum Druid or Thaddius Warlock, in which case you might struggle a little bit. Anyway, overall meta, overall ladder, Hound Hunter, the clear number 1. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.